God bless.
That begs a question, because something in our DNA why we dislike, or we've been programmed to dislike each other. We don't like to live beside each other. We go out to the PG and we leave DC, and now the folks are coming back into DC, and we can't get back into the city. What's going on here?
Oh, because we dislike each other because we know each other. Because they look at each other and say, "You don't hold or control anything. You don't have any wealth and power and clout. You can't do anything for me. Nor can you do anything against me. So why should I respect, appreciate, and want to be associated with you?" It's a very simple answer to that one. Because see, all the money, the wealth, and power and privileges are associated with those who basically have white skin, and so then naturally, it's natural for blacks to gravitate to that. That's a normal phenomenon. They got all the power and the wealth, the power and the control, the privileges, positions, and all levels of government and the media. You gravitate to where it is. And people.
Interrupt me for a second, Doc. But does that same dynamic play out in other other ethnicities as well?
Yeah, to a large degree, because but they got a difference. They got an advantage on you. First of all, their advantage is they're classified as whites in the country. See, the only two colored issues you got in this country is black and white. All these other people are classified as whites, and the Hispanics were always classified as whites. Arabs and Asians have mixed together in about the last 20 years, but they're not classified as Asians, so they're classified as whites, and some of the Asians just on probation to be white. American Indians, all the way back to the 1700s, were identified by Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, said that American Indians they're the cousin of white folks. That's why we can accept them. We'll brag about how much Indian blood we got in them. We don't mind affiliating with them. They're just savages. We can educate them and get along with them. The issue has always been black and white. And people keep talking about people of color. There ain't no people of color. Whites got color. But they get deluded and think that somehow somebody wants to affiliate with them. Nobody's going to affiliate with you if you have no power, no resource, no privileges, no status, no culture, and no responsible behavior. And all these blacks that act up and do wild things, they're just supporting the demise of black folks.
Chapter 8, Becoming Politically and Economically Competitive in America. The God sees what is to come. Wise men see what is coming, and ordinary men see what has come. A new era is dawning, bringing dramatic changes across the world. Within the next 20 years, these changes will place Black people in the midst of one of the most important and turbulent periods in the history of mankind. There will be accelerated technological changes, unprecedented political upheaval, massive global population migration, and emerging national political economies. He did call it. These global changes will produce new anxieties and uncertainties. There will be a marked increase in ethnic and racial hostility as racial groups compete for power, wealth, and control of resources. Throughout mankind's history, competitive struggles between ethnic and racial groups have regulated their populations and established a relative ranking of power among them. In power struggles, the strongest survive and prosper. The weak or non-competitive groups disappear or live to serve the strong. Black America is approaching the threshold of the 21st century. We're here now as a non-competitive socioeconomic disaster. And we're here now as a non-competitive socioeconomic disaster. It is ill-prepared to compete with other racial and ethnic groups. Contrary to popular belief, Blacks have made only relatively slight political and economic progress. Their quality of life has improved only because the general conditions of white society improved. The crucial question now concerns not civil rights, voting rights, affirmative action, or even equal opportunity. Instead, the question is whether or not Black Americans are ready to face the socioeconomic realities that confront them. Do Blacks understand what will happen to them if they do not pull themselves up by the year 2013? No, it's 2025, Doc, and we still don't get it. Do they understand that they are at risk of becoming a permanent underclass in America? Now we're starting to see it, but it's too late. Developing political and economic forces do not bode well for Blacks. Black America's frail state makes it vulnerable to international and domestic developments that could converge and do great injury to Blacks around the year 2013. Conditions for blacks will be made more serious by the hardening sentiments of the next white generation, which surveys predict will be more indifferent and harbor stronger anti-black attitudes. The merging of international superpower economies that will force blacks to compete with better prepared and united groups from around the globe. Higher unemployment and less public access resulting from downsizing and privatizing in government services. Sounds familiar, don't it? Continued deterioration of black families, churches, and other institutions. The loss of status of blacks from a majority minority to a minority, right? We are minorities now. Deteriorating social and economic conditions that would spur a general increase of criminal activity with the major portion associated with blacks. The continuing impact of a 350-year-old national public policy on the use of blacks that basically made blacks obsolete 3 decades ago. Now is the time for Black America to start developing strategies for becoming a more competitive group. The purpose of this book is twofold. Firstly, to identify the historical genesis of what wealth and power and black poverty and powerlessness. Secondly, based upon conclusions from historical analysis, to use white society as a model and recommend strategies that blacks can adopt in order to gain competitive wealth and power. In this chapter, various strategies for improving the quality of life for Black Americans are discussed, followed by analysis and recommendations. These strategies would demand from blacks a more focused and self-serving set of priorities and behavior patterns. They are absolutely necessary in order to give blacks real power. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Happy Monday. Welcome back to On the Shoulders of Giants. I am Joseph Ward, continuing my reading of Dr. Claude Anderson's amazing book, Black Labor, White Wealth, The Search for Power and Economic Justice. Chapter 8, Chapter 8, Becoming Politically and Economically Competitive in America. Dr. Anderson, we might as well call him Prophet Anderson. Dr. Anderson did his studies, and his studies showed us that the realities we're living now, he predicted, or he told us they were coming. He told us that we will have influx in immigrants. He told us that a lot of the jobs will be replaced by technology, and some of the jobs won't have access to. He told us that we'll be relegated to a minority instead of a majority minority. We're minority. He told us these things would come. We didn't listen. We didn't prepare. Now we're here. He said these things will happen by 2013. It is 2025. We are almost halfway through 2025, and we still are like deers in the headlight. We don't get it. We are still a non-competitive group in America. We are still behind. We still have not made any real tangible progress for ourselves to put ourselves in a better position to not be a forgotten class or a useless class of people in America. If as a majority minority, we got crumbs off the table, as a minority, we get crumbs from the crumbs. Is that okay? But individual success is more important than group success. Individual progress for us is more important than group progress. That's why we are a non-competitive group. We may have individuals who can compete in certain realms for a small or short amount of time, but as a whole, we have nothing competitive to offer to the world, to the race. It's like we're in the race, but we forfeited the race. But we're gonna talk junk about being in the race and talk junk about how bad we want to win the race. Well, we're forfeiting our place in the race because we're forfeiting the team. And we have to become a competitive group. Now, as I state that, I don't believe we will do that on a mass scale. So on a critical mass scale, we have to become as competitive as we can. Whether we like it or not, we're in a real life competition. We're either going to win or we're gonna lose. We either gonna come out on top or we're gonna fold. If we want to be relegated truly to a useless class of people, the other groups of people don't mind helping us get there. They don't mind stepping on this. That's what competition is. That's just what it is. But Dr. Anderson is saying this is the issues. These are the issues that we've been facing. And now let's look at strategies to help us change our situation, to help us change our position. So everybody who likes to come in the comments and say, you stated all the problems, but what are the solutions? Even though we constantly talk about solutions, here are some specific solutions and specific strategies. Excuse me. Specific strategies to help us become a more competitive group, to help us care more, to help us be better. Before I get into those strategies, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you like this video, comment, subscribe, share. Make sure as many people as possible are able to get access to this information. Listen to this information, digest it, and spread it on to other people. Share this video, comment, like, subscribe. You can even hit that super like button to support as well. And remember, if you don't hit that like button, it's because you don't support Dr. Anderson. You don't support the progress, real progress of Black people if you don't hit that like button. But hit that like button for me. And let's dive back into this. So this is page 175 where it says Strategy 1, Leadership. And remember, this is chapter 8, Becoming Politically and Economically Competitive in America. Humans, like all orders in life, seek leadership and find it naturally. But in America, white society has been the proactive institutional leader, and Black America has reactively followed with new leaders who arise in response to each new issue or event. The power and resource disparity between Blacks and whites has caused Blacks to have different standards for selecting, developing, and recognizing leadership. Beyond the fact that there are numerous differentiations of leadership, the most important factor in examining Black leadership is the understanding that power and leadership are relationships based upon socioeconomic motives and needs. Leaders are individuals who can induce others to cooperatively work towards certain goals that represent the values and motivations of both the leader and the followers. To fully understand the nature of leadership, to fully understand the nature of leadership requires understanding the essence of power, because leadership is a special form of power. The goal of forming new Black leadership is to acquire for Blacks in this lifetime economic justice, wealth, power, and equal employment of the rewards and benefits of the American dream. Okay, so here's an analysis, right? So we're talking about leadership is a specific type of power. Here's an analysis. In a competitive society, there are no mechanisms to give voice to unorganized and inarticulate groups. Mainstream society tends to oppose extra measures to include such groups. White society develops and conducts its substantive training on many fronts simultaneously within government, academia, the media, and corporate and other institutional structures. They manipulate and manage these entities so that they will reflect white society's wishes and attitudes about all major socioeconomic issues, especially race. Blacks have limited access to and control of established institutions. Black leadership too often does not spring forth from systems of leadership training, but rather results from a call into community service by a higher power to resolve a particular dilemma. It follows that the calling is answered usually from the ranks of the most independent sectors of Black communities, churches, small business operators, and community agencies. Most individuals from these organizations have served their communities without the benefit and broad competitive organizational resources behind them. True. True. So how they view leadership and how they go about leading is limited because of the limited view and the limited resources, and how they have always had to operate. It's been a specific way. But If these certain institutions are the only institutions that continuously crank out leaders, and then the leaders that are crunked out of these institutions don't provide anything tangible, why do you think we keep going back to that well? We keep pumping that well and getting nothing from that well, but we keep doing it. Guess it's comfortable. It's comfortable to keep doing it because we don't know anything else. And that's the only thing we trust. And while we still trust it, we have no idea. Lacking access to comprehensive data, talent banks, and well-trained organizational leadership, Black America has no formal way to assess past accomplishments and political leaders. It is difficult to distinguish between benevolent and self-serving leadership. Aspiring leaders, on the other hand, are sometimes forced to substitute rhetoric for research and emotionalism for planning. Those who are most charismatic and eloquent are elevated to leadership status, but to serve within their own communities, these leaders must remain constantly visible and involved with all levels of the Black community while being exposed to adversarial elements, negative press, conservative government policies, racial groups outside of the Black community, right? Number 3, many Blacks who are capable of leadership lack the tools of leadership, access to organizational power, media, and money. Blacks who accept the mantle of leadership often fail to significantly change the conditions of Black America because they are reactive rather than proactive, single issue or event oriented, and weak on long-term planning. After nearly 400 years, Blacks still have not developed a comprehensive national public policy or master plan, nor have they coordinated efforts between Black communities and organizations to move Black America towards self-sufficiency and empowerment. Right. The dream of Black-white integration caused many Blacks to abandon their interest in mainstream and maintaining a strong sense of community, or to know, trust, and be responsible for their neighbors' well-being. Many in the Black middle class have joined in the tail end of white flight to the suburbs and have failed to reconnect with their own communities, culture, and racial realities. Responding to the integration process, Black civil rights leaders have sought to accommodate and access institutionalized white power and wealth rather than seek to establish their own. What I keep talking about. Black communities tend to seek out one leader or messiah at a time. Most often, such an individual is the most visible person rather than the most able or committed. This lack of self-imposed standards for Black leadership makes it easy for white society to use its power to anoint leaders from within Black communities. Unwittingly or not, this method protects the interests of white society and allows it to manipulate which Black leaders will be publicly acknowledged, respected, or rewarded. Institutional powers are used to discredit or remove aggressive Blacks, often labeling them as radical or offensive. The world is rapidly changing, yet Black leadership seems frozen in time. Forces focus on alleviating the symptoms rather than the causes of racism impede meaningful change. Too many Black leaders continue to read from the political and economic scripts that are hopelessly short-sighted in addressing the myriad of fast-approaching domestic and international changes. While keeping their eyes on the integration prize, Black hopes, families, and communities are being destroyed by rampant social pathology. Blacks witness the steady decline in the quality of their lives and exhort the things that have got to get better. They borrow from the conservative white agenda and blame the problems on the symptoms and the victims rather than the systematic causes. Too many Black leaders have the heart and commitment, but lack the vision and power. Tomorrow's pluralistic and increasingly competitive society will demand Black leadership that will neither grow old nor be bought off or assassinated. The national public policy on the use of Blacks by design has kept Black leaders have kept Blacks leaderless and weak in their pursuit of power and wealth. The new Black leadership must be just as devoted to achieving self-sustaining Black communities within 10 years or less. Achieving this goal requires Black leaders with vision, not dreams. The mind's eye of the new Black leadership must be wide open. And so now he follows that up with recommendations for strategy 1. So here are his recommendations. One, unlike a dream, the mechanisms of self-empowerment will not materialize on their own accord. New organizational leadership must arise and become the force behind a collective national movement that will provide a unifying framework that all existing Black organizations can use to harness their political, formulate a promise to harness their political, formulate a common direction, and prevent them from working at cross purposes. A new kind of Black Leadership Institute is needed to buttress the current scarcity of Black individual and organizational leadership. Blacks must establish a think tank with an intellectual infrastructure that focuses exclusively on formulating national policy blueprints for solutions to be the multitude of conditions crippling Black America. This institute should be an independent, nonpartisan, tax-exempt research foundation. It should provide proactive research to promote comprehensive prescriptive strategies for achieving Black political and economic self-empowerment. It should be distinguished from the other Black think tanks by the activism that should flow from its research and focus on those issues that are common to all Blacks, regardless of economic, social, or educational differences. A national public policy and plan should go hand in hand with the training of new Black leadership. All levels of Black America need to understand how they benefit as individuals and as a race in terms of wealth, wealth, power, peoplehood, and generational improvement in the quality of life. Without Black America's energetic participation, directed by new Black leadership, the national obsolescence and marginal existence of Blacks will continue. New Black leadership must use technological advances to create a national informational network that could be designed to communicate with constituents and to broaden educational, scientific, economic, and technological cooperation among and within Black communities. Data and research developed by institutional leadership could be accessible to decision-making Blacks and others in the private and public sectors. The new Black leadership must develop a strategy for Blacks to compete in domestic and international markets with the majority and other minority communities. Empowerment goals and timetables must be established and promoted throughout every Black community. Issues and events ought to be prioritized and focused through a public policy template designed to produce what is best for Blacks. A public policy template would not only simplify the decision-making process, but would provide structure and ideological continuity. The new Black leadership must be able to discern and counter the new so-called colorblind or race-neutral racism, which does nothing more than maintain the status quo. New racism hides the dominant society's indifference towards Blacks by forcing the nation's attention on non-issues such as sexism, minority, party, sexual preferences, privatization of public services, crime abatement, quotas, and affirmative action backlashes. These issues distract Black leaders into wheel-spinning activities that diffuse and drain the Blacks' race limited resources. They must understand and forcibly counter the political ploys of white conservative think tanks, which constantly develop and promote new code words for racism. So basically, Black leadership has to be totally restructured. Black leadership has to be totally restructured and totally rethought about how we lead, and Black followership has to be restructured as well. How Black leadership is even developed has to be changed. Everything about leadership and followership in the Black community has to change. If it's not focused solely on us to make sure that we are truly empowered, we truly have what we need to empower ourselves, then we're still running the same cycle, running on the same wheel, not getting anything different, looking to get the same responses that we would normally get from the current way that leadership has been given to us and leadership has been displayed in Black America. Black America has been lulled to sleep by a romanticized idea of failed leadership for Black America. And I say failed leadership because there's no real progress. That doesn't mean nobody has done anything, but that means as we take a look at the whole picture, we haven't gotten what we needed as a people, as a true group of people who should be powerful and competitive. Now, if you make the argument that we should have got what we got as an oppressed group of people who are going to remain oppressed, then hey, you have no argument. But if our goal is to improve ourselves and empower ourselves, then the leadership that we have gotten, especially in the last 50, 60, 70 years, has not been up to par. We have not gotten what we needed to improve ourselves. Black leadership has been a failure, whether it's in the conscious community, whether it's in the regular Black community, the Boule Black community, any aspects of the Black community, in the streets, whatever, in the homes, whatever. Black leadership as a whole, en masse, has been a failure. Once again, that does not exclude or overlook the Black leaders, the competent Black leaders who do a great job of leading and do what they can and are making progress and do have tangible outcomes. It's not overlooking them. It's not undermining them. But as a whole, en masse, Black leadership has not gotten Black people where we need to be. And if there are, like we read, if there are capable leaders, they don't have the resources or the followers. If the leader is not charismatic and don't make people feel good, people won't follow them. People follow leaders who make them feel good rather than leaders who are good for them. And that's one of our problems. Strategy 2, wealth and capital formation. Centuries of compulsory Black pauperism have created a powerful imbalance between whites and Blacks. Dominant white society possesses nearly 100% of the wealth and the tools for assessing and amassing wealth. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. recognized the importance of the relationship between wealth and racial equality late in his career. He told the Southern Christian Leadership Council, American society must have a racial redistribution of wealth and economic power to achieve even a rough form of social justice. We must recognize that we can't solve our problems now until there's a radical redistribution of economic and political power. Until the wealth imbalance is significantly reduced, Black and white radical strife will continue unabated. Here's an analysis of that. The fall of the last great West African empire in the 15th century gave rise to the wholesale exploitation of the continent's natural and human capital by European and Arab traders. Black labor and Africa's mineral wealth became investment commodities as America's wealth increased primarily as a result of slave labor. As slaves and cheap labor, Blacks were classified as valuable commodities that gave land its value. Land was the second major producer of white wealth, but it did not surpass Blacks until well after the Civil War. Until that time, wealth from Black labor was the engine that drove world civilization for nearly 300 years, beginning in Europe and spreading into the New World. Wealth produced by Blacks fueled banking and industrial revolutions, generated new forms of government and economies, transferred massive amounts of wealth across racial, ethnic, and natural boundaries, and fomented numerous civil wars. Black labor essentially fed, clothed, and enriched nations all around the world. Ironically, Black created wealth was used to sustain slavery, Jim Crowism, and provide an economic safety net for European, Hispanic, and Asian refugees. Blacks have remained producers but not possessors of wealth, even now as the world progresses towards the threshold of the 21st century. The U.S. government established and maintained preferential treatment laws, policies, and programs that gave and preserved wealth, power, and privilege status for European whites. The government's preferential treatment programs and policies aggressively helped 16 generations of European whites to acquire free and cheap land, Black labor, businesses, and employment opportunities, and other forms of government assistance. At the same time, government-supported laws and customs denied Blacks access to the same resources and prohibited them from competing with whites in education, labor, professional trades, and businesses. Without government assistance, black enslavement would not have been possible. Without black slave labor to make the new world productive, land would have had little value, and the United States would not have developed into the economic military superpower that it is today. Through inheritance, accumulated wealth is passed from one family's generation to the next. Wealth acquired by white families based on expropriation of black labor and land ownership passed on to succeeding generations of whites until the original sources of wealth became hidden by time. With the conclusion of slavery, dominant white society increasingly turned away from blacks and towards alternative means of producing wealth. Much of this wealth was converted into competitive stocks, public bonds, and banking certificates, which were government regulated and protected. The percentage of white wealth has remained unchanged from generation to generation. Those who inherited wealth will most likely remain wealthy and powerful. Controlling less than 2% of the nation's wealth, primarily in the form of a primary residence, automobile, and savings accounts, blacks have little wealth to pass on. Due to the minuscule number of black businesses, few blacks ever inherit a business. Discriminatory policies within the banking industry, insurance industry, and mortgage companies have impeded blacks' economic progress and acquisitions of wealth. Marginal economic forces, marginal economies force blacks into apartment renting or public housing tendencies, which provides neither tax shelters nor equity for future black generations to inherit. In essence, black heirs are likely to inherit permanently poverty and unpaid debt. So we don't give our children access to wealth the same way other groups give their children access to wealth. We don't have the wealth to pass down the same way that other groups of people have the wealth to pass down. And if we do have the wealth, is the wealth passed down with the knowledge of long-term wealth, long-term solutions, long-term holding? And I'm gonna get to the recommendations, but he's talking about the inability to create wealth and pass it down, the inability to make sure that future generations are taken care of. So every generation has to get it out of the mud, and every generation has that mindset of we have to start over from the beginning. So if we continue to have to start over from the beginning for each generation, the wealth gap will never be closed. Now, of course, gave you my opinion on the closing of the wealth gap, but still it remains the same. The wealth gap will never be closed if black people continue to have to start from the beginning every generation. So if you own nothing, you can pass down nothing to your children. So something has to be acquired during your lifetime so you can pass it down to your children to give them some kind of leg up to help themselves be able to generate more wealth in the future. So here's some of Dr. Anderson's recommendations. It is time for blacks to make acquiring reparations from the American government a major national issue. Reparation payments should be directed into black communities in the form of infrastructure improvements, business and industry development loans, educational grants and stipends, and expanded public services to repair the socioeconomic damages and the dominant society and government have inflicted on 16 generations of black Americans. An immigrant fee should be charged to all new immigrants and channeled into the investment fund earmarked for the economic revitalization and industrial development of black ghettos. America remains the premier destination for legal and illegal immigrants all around the world. It is clear that the government must stop the riot of immigrants seeking to benefit of the first-class citizenship who would have neither paid any dues nor contributed towards building the quality of life they are seeking. Immigrants should no longer be given a free lunch upon the granting of citizenship. It is criminally unfair for generation after generation of European, Asian, and Hispanic immigrants to be brought into this country and allowed to enjoy benefits historically denied to blacks. Directing immigration fees into the investment fund will not be a novel, and it would not be a novel initiative. The 1990 Immigration Act allows 10,000 visas each year for foreign investors who invest between 500,000 and 3 million in an enterprise that provides employment for at least 10 full-time U.S. workers. Blacks could use the act as a model for establishing an immigration investment fund to industrialize Black communities and improve its economic conditions. With small modifications, the visas would be issued to investors who put money into Black communities. Smaller immigration fees could also be established and directed towards Black reparation programs. The economic justice that would be inherent in such fees would not only be the repayment to Black communities for its expropriated labor, the fees would also be cushioned for the new immigrants to drain on social services, establish common ground between the immigrants and Blacks, and repair the economic drain that these ethnic businesses cause Black communities. The investment fund strategy will also provide training and investment loans for Blacks to start businesses. Furthermore, just as ethnic immigrants are using revenues generated from their Black-oriented businesses in order to pay transportation costs of their relatives and friends from their homelands to America, Blacks could use investment funds to cover the cost of bringing in and hiring immigrants of African descent. In fighting for such measures, Blacks could make a national issue out of the racial injustice within American immigration policies. Here's another recommendation. There is no historical justification for providing affirmative action relief for groups such as Asians, Hispanics, and disabled, gays, abused wives, or senior citizens. People in these categories haven't suffered it throughout American history. Blacks must refocus the national agenda on race, then extricate themselves from the catch-all category of minority. As the dominant society's public policy on Blacks continues to make Blacks obsolete, government will increasingly function as the drum major for benign neglect toward Black Americans. Useless Black steps forward to challenge the government to amend its policies, affirmative action in name only, will be used to perpetuate the shame. There will be no affirmative action efforts that solely address the historical wrongings that still hound Blacks. Instead, affirmative action programs will be nothing more than empty shields for addressing the needs of ambiguous and amorphous groupings. Affirmative action provisions should be meted out on a ranking or scale that determines the most needy and the most worthy. In addition, public policy remedies must be reconstructed for the narrow purpose of redress to Blacks. The justification for such measures is this: Hispanics, white women, and other minorities were not statutorily enslaved, Jim Crowed, or racially segregated. Redress should be directed towards specific injured groups and not to non-injured classes who now seek the benefit of the affirmative action programs that were originally designed to address the historical sufferings of Blacks. Qualifications for reparation type programs should include a scale to measure the degrees and extent of historical oppressions, as well as the magnitude of contribution the political reparation recipients made toward the development of the nation. Applications of affirmative action or reparation benefits should also include a scale to both assess the extent to which applicants sustain statutory abuse by the government and measure the length of the potential recipients' residence in this country. So, real reparations, real reparations, not these studies. Not studies, but real reparations, right? Because the second strategy, once again, the second strategy is wealth and capital formation. So reparations, Dr. Anderson is saying reparations is one way that we can build wealth, that we can accumulate wealth for ourselves in this country. Through reparations, but we have to stop classifying ourselves in a way that allows others to be able to benefit from things that are designed for us. So as long as we classify ourselves as minorities, as long as we classify ourselves in a way that denotes that we're inclusive with everybody else, we'll never get the specifics that we need for ourselves. And so how we define ourselves, how we talk about ourselves, how we label ourselves matters in public and legally. It matters how we talk. We are not minorities. We are Black people in America. We're freedmen. We're ADOS, FBA, whatever you want to call ourselves. It has to be specific to us and our experiences and our lineage. And we also have to understand that every other group is trying to leech off of the gains or even provisions or even rights or regulations or bills that are passed for us. DEI was the last great example that we had. DEI was, Black women were the face of DEI, but white women were the greatest recipients. It was an affirmative action plan that was talked about as if it was designed for the Black community. But if it's designed for the Black community, why are the white women the greatest recipients of it? And we talked about affirmative action for white people the last video. White people have gotten handouts from the government forever. Homestead Act, all other type of acts. Even the actual affirmative action plan that was created was beneficial to white people more so than anybody else. Right? The plan that was labeled the affirmative action plan, right? So white people will contend on that Black people have continued to get handouts, but we know that white people have gotten the real handouts in this country. And because they've gotten the real handouts, they've had that access to wealth, that access to the straps to pull themselves up by the boots. The boots, they got boots to put on, boots with straps to pull themselves up. So white people have had that. We haven't had it. But Dr. Anderson is giving us strategies on how we can go get what we need to improve our condition. So strategy 3, because this video, I want to marinate. I want to kind of take my time with this. I'm not going to rush through this chapter because we got these strategies. I want us to marinate on these strategies. So strategy 3, wealth and group economics. Blacks are America's most impoverished population group, but when considered as a nation within a nation, they could generate disposable income to sustain Black communities. Black America has approximately 280 billion annually in disposable income, but as a group, they remain impoverished because they have failed to create their own international economy, and therefore they do not retain their capital within their communities. And remember, this book was published in 94. This book was published in 1994. Remember that. To survive in the rapidly approaching pluralistic society, Blacks must create a Black economy. To develop economically, Black dollars must bounce or exchange hands 8 to 10 times before leaving the Black community. Contained and recirculated dollars within the Black communities will stimulate businesses, create employment opportunities, and expand tax bases. But we want to give our money to the white folks so bad, though. Matter of fact, we want to give our money to any and everybody who has something to make us feel like we're something. Besides correcting the classic, and this is, so I'm getting into the analysis and then I get into the recommendations, right? So here's an analysis. Here's some of the analysis that he has. Besides correcting the classic problem surrounding the insufficient number of high failure of Black businesses, 2 other social factors impede the establishment of effective operation of Black businesses and Black communities. The withholding of support by whites and Blacks, and the lack of a vertical network of supportive businesses. It is difficult and in many instances impossible for Black businesses to survive when both whites and Blacks are boycotting them. Regardless of any businesses, know-how, and capital, a Black business person, no matter how much know-how and capital a Black business person has, without a customer base, the business cannot thrive. White society avoids doing business with Blacks. However, Blacks now boycott Black businesses also as they pursue the integration dream. Boycotting activities intensified after the 1954 desegregation decision. Black businesses that survived boycotting have been hamstrung by the lack of supportive vertical Black businesses within their communities. It is very difficult for Black retail businesses to be competitive when they are wholly dependent upon non-Black distributors, manufacturers, warehouses, processors, and wholesalers for their products. Surveys have shown that these upline businesses charge Blacks 25 to 50% more for poor quality merchandise than is delivered on an irregular and unpredictable schedule. With overpriced, poor quality merchandise, Black businesses cannot be competitive. Such conditions reconfirm Black customers' inclination to look for the products from whites, believing that the white man's ice is colder. Many successful Black businesses have survived by politically or economically passing in white communities. They got ahead of the customers' march to the suburbs by building their businesses in the suburbs and catering to non-Black customers. By locating their businesses outside of the Black community, they hope to capture some portion of the white and Black customers who routinely boycott Black businesses and spend their disposable income in the white communities. By appearing as non-Black owned companies, they became independent of Black communities. These businesses are permitted to operate in white communities as long as they do so in a non-competitive or non-threatening fashion. Should it become known that they are successful and Black owned, they would be in for serious problems with whites. Thus, Black businesses that are totally dependent upon the larger white economy are guests who exist on borrowed time. The doctrine of unequal exchange continues to be an effective strategy that whites use to gain access to Black wealth. Blacks actually transfer their disposable income into white communities and receive little more than customer satisfaction in return. Blacks currently retain about 5% of their total gross income. Of this 5%, approximately 3% is spent with non-Black merchants who take it out of the Black neighborhoods. Only 2% remains within Black merchants. It is impossible for Black communities to survive off 2% of its annual income. By spending their income with non-Black businesses, Blacks deprive their communities of a tax base for providing human services and jobs. In a capitalistic country, human worth is valid in terms of ownership and control of wealth. So Blacks disempower themselves when they don't spend money with other Blacks, right? Employers, business owners, and investors have 5 times the net worth of employees. Blacks in general have had a greater number of businesses per 1,000 persons at the turn of the century than they have had today. To turn this around, Blacks as a group must employ discipline and cooperation. They must utilize the principles of group economics and group policies. To improve the wealth base of Black America, there must be an increase in the number and size of Black-owned businesses and industries. And there has been an increase in the number of Black-owned businesses that exist, but the first principles of actually working together don't exist. The principles of creating respectable, reputable businesses and Black people working together vertically to, like Dr. Anderson mentioned, that doesn't exist. Black people have created businesses through the lens of rugged individualism as I have to get mine, but it's not a we thing, it's a me thing. So more businesses have been created, but we're still, as a group, disenfranchised, impoverished as a group. Economically, we're still not competitive. Even though Black people, we have more money than we've ever had at any time in this country, we still have nothing in comparison. And like Dr. Anderson said, the only reason we're making more money now is because America as a whole is making more money. The only way Black people have more money now is because America as a whole has more money. So, and the rising tide did lift all the boats, but Black America's boat could be a whole lot better. if we actually invested in the boat. So here's some recommendations. To achieve self-sufficiency, blacks must master the principles of capitalism and group economics. The window of opportunity for achieving this goal will pass within the next decade. It has passed. Basically what he's saying is past. It's 2025. Civil rights, social rights, and integration cannot produce group wealth and power. Vertical integration of businesses and industries as a design that has the potential to create numerous individual and linked businesses, and therefore should become the basis for an economic development strategy for blacks. Vertically integrated businesses should be constructed around consumer products that blacks buy in a disproportionate number, or in areas where blacks are disproportionately represented in the production of the product. For example, blacks are high consumers of seafood, compact disc tapes and records, electronic equipment, expensive athletic wear, leather goods, distilled liquors, and movies. They are disproportionately represented in musical, entertainment, education, and professional sports. All of these areas could represent opportunities for vertical businesses structures for blacks. In a vertically integrated business structure, blacks would control the business requirements on each level of the overall business structure, therefore manufacturing from retailing. Vertical integration provides business opportunities for warehouses, wholesalers, shippers, distributors, truckers, dealers, insurance carriers, and other supportive businesses. The interrelatedness or vertical connection of the businesses establish a network that protects the business from competitors while guaranteeing an economically empowering flow of wealth via the services and products. Although the size of the black consumer market is limited, that is not necessarily an insurmountable barrier to building businesses. Markets can be expanded to achieve economics of a scale by exporting products from black communities to surrounding communities. With a strong sense of natural community, a product produced in one black community could be competitively produced for domestic or markets in black foreign nations. Vertical businesses within black communities could reduce high underemployment and unemployment rates by hiring black people, enhancing their communities, tax base, and increasing their group wealth and disposable income. As previously discussed, there is enough capital within the black community to support businesses. In addition, black businesses will not have to market themselves to blacks only. They simply need to have a solid base of black customers, just as all other ethnic and racial groups provide solid and dependable customer bases for their industries. And as I said earlier, black businesses have been created, but these black businesses don't have the means to hire black people. These are solo businesses, a bunch of black solo businesses, a bunch of mid-level black solo businesses have been created of black people who still have to go to a 9-to-5. So it's been an image of, black prosperity, but no, it's just black people still trying to survive. It's still black people trying to survive out here because a lot of these businesses can't employ other people because they can't even survive off these businesses alone. They have to go to a regular 9-to-5 to survive, right? But Dr. Anderson is saying that could be changed if black people choose to do different, if we choose to work together. So he's giving us strategies. He's giving us an analysis and recommendations and strategies to help us do something different, how we can go about doing this. Hey, what about a vertical integration of black businesses? That means we're building ourselves from within, everything we have to build ourselves up and be able to operate on our own without having to lean and rely on anyone else. We can be totally self-sufficient. Now, Dr. Anderson is laying out the plans as a strategist, a leader, and an economist. But the psychological work has to be done. So this coming Saturday, I'm going live with my man Henry Rawls at 3:30 p.m. So make sure you tune in 3:30 p.m. I'm going live, and we're going to be talking about breaking the chains of psychological slavery. Because the plans that Dr. Anderson has given us have not been implemented because we have not broken the chains of psychological slavery. We still think like consumers. We still think like the lower level people who should just be buyers and workers. We don't think like owners and producers and manufacturers and leaders. We don't think like that. We think like everybody's supposed to come and save us. We have more money than we believe. Yes. Are we impoverished? Yes, but we have way more money than we believe. And we can do a lot more if we work better with the money we had, if we circulate that money within our community longer, if we did more business with Black people. But at the same time, Black businesses have to be better. Black businesses can't be operating like everybody work at Popeyes. It has to be a relationship between the customer and the producer. The Black community has to realize that as of right now, we are our greatest enemy. We are our greatest impediment. I'm not saying we are the only one, and I'm not saying we are the root of it. But right now, we can't get out of our own way and save ourselves, then help ourselves do better. Economically, we won't become competitive until that changes. We won't have legs to stand on. We won't have anything to help spur us forward because there's no collectiveness. There might be a critical mass here, critical mass there, critical mass everywhere, but there's no real push to make sure that Black people become a competitive group. You just trying to be competitive on your own is not enough. You'll be one Black person who's praised for having money, but you'll still be complaining about Black America not having what we need. Dr. Anderson can only give us the information. We got to use it. Let's use the information. Let's stop being so dang on stubborn and finding every excuse in the book to not work together. Let's stop doing that because that's not helping us. Black labor, white wealth. You ask for solutions, we're going to get solutions. So, like I said, I'm not rushing through this chapter. So that is, once again, chapter 8. I started on page 173, and I read from 173 to 189. From 173 to 189. So next video, we're going to pick up on 189 and read from 189 to 206. From 189 to 206, picking up on strategy 4, black underemployment and unemployment. So go back through the strategies real quick. Let's go back through the strategies. I went too far. Strategy 1 is leadership. Our leadership has to be better. How leaders are formed, how leaders are nurtured, how leaders lead, how followers follow. What leaders, the resources leaders have, like everything has to change. They need resources, they need followers, they need support. But leaders have to be genuine grassroots leaders who have our best interest at hand, not just people who are charismatic, who can talk, who can charm people. But our leader has to be good for us, not just making us feel good. Then he talked about wealth and capital formation. What are we doing to actually build wealth, long-term wealth? Not trying to be rich right now and spend all our money and look like ballers and whatever. What are we doing? What do we own that appreciates with value that we can pass down to future generations? Right. Then he talked about wealth and group economics. Working as a group to build and maintain wealth. To understand that as a group, as a competitive group, because that's one of the things we don't get. We don't understand that this is a competition and we have to operate as a competitive group. So once you're operating as a competitive group, the mission is to build group wealth. Individual wealth will reflect group wealth, and group wealth will reflect individual wealth because we're operating as a team. But group wealth has to be created, and we have to create an economy around the wealth that we're trying to build. The economy will help us build the wealth. Black America itself has to have an economy within our own communities, within our own nation. Looking at ourselves as a nation and having an economy within our own nation and using that economy to spur us forward, to build more wealth, more opportunities, to acquire more, to be able to produce more and bring back more. But that's a whole nother discussion for another time, right? Not really. But that's what we have to do. And we have to take all of these things seriously. And because we've not taken these things seriously, we have had no real progress. Dr. Anderson wrote, this book was published in 94, and we still haven't used the strategies in this book as a whole. And that's why one of the reasons why we're still where we are. We have had so many scholars, so many leaders give us information that we refuse to use. Well, we use the information from the buffoons, though. The people who make us feel good, the buffoons, the people who out there clowning and have all the spotlights, who don't get no real tangible progress, we listen to them. But the people who actually have sound strategies that don't make us feel good, but are good for us, we turn our backs on them, we ignore them. That's one of the issues that we have. If we want to continue, if we want to quit being labeled, if we want to quit being labeled for everybody else, we got to get our minds right and start to build as a competent group of people, or shut up, and we're going to continue to be stepped on. So, hey, make sure you hit that like button, comment, subscribe, share. Black Labor, White Wealth, the search for power and economic justice. Chapter 8, becoming politically and economically competitive in America. What is we going to do? Make sure y'all catch that next video coming up. And remember, next week, we're going to jump into strategy number 4, Black underemployment and unemployment. Peace out.